days from now, there will be a music festival happening downtown Las Vegas called Life is Beautiful. One of the coolest music festivals, art festivals in the country. Covers something like 18 blocks here in downtown LV. I've gotten to know a couple of the organizers of the event, so I want to give a shout out to those guys. Gonna put a link down below. If anyone out there is interested in buying a VIP ticket, you want to treat yourself, maybe. Speaking of shout outs, I want to give a shout out to everybody who came out to the meetup game this past Sunday, held at the Bellagio during their live stream game. Not only was it a super fun time, but we also managed to raise $1,227 for some hurricane relief efforts. So that's awesome. Wasn't exactly my best session that I've ever played, but very happy with the much more important aspect of raising all that money for some hurricane relief efforts. There's a couple people that donated to our fundraiser page directly, and then tons of people just came by and dropped chips, couple dollar bills into the jar that we had set up next to the live stream table. So that was awesome. Really fun night. Aside from jamming 5-high flush draw directly into a full house, really fun night. And a very special shout out to Chrissy, who was one of the dealers during the live stream game. She donated all of her tips that she got during the live stream game, dropped them right into the jar. Off they went. Always looking forward to the next meetup game. Not looking forward to the next hangover, but the game itself, yeah. All right, as mentioned, Tuesday evening, time to get back to work. Usually Tuesday ends up being one of, if not the slowest nights of the week. So maybe switch it up a little bit. Maybe we'll go hop at a 2-5 game. Maybe we'll go check out the Wynn. It feels like a nice change of pace. What do you say? Let's go.
Check it out, guys. Brand new sportsbook area here in the Encore. Pretty fancy, drenched in red as usual. Nice and comfy chairs over here. Plenty of viewing screens for all your sporting pleasures. They didn't pay me to say this. They should, but they didn't. All right, hopping in the 2-5, 1,500 maximum, no limit Texas Hold'em. Gonna come right back here into this very chair and report some hands back to you as they come up. Let's go. All right, guys, so as promised, have some hands, 2 hands in fact, to report to you guys. Played a rather large pot, a rather large 2-5 pot here with pocket kings. So the under the gun player makes it 15, the under the gun plus 2 player makes it 30. Player on his left calls. As mentioned, pocket kings in the small blind. Definitely 4-bet material here. Pocket kings out of position. Don't want this going multi-way, $30 a person. Definitely gonna pump it up here. So I make it $130. The problem is that I actually did not realize that the first caller of the 3-bet, the player in middle position, didn't even realize that he was in there. Didn't realize he was in the hand. Somehow made a mistake and missed him, so my sizing is a little bit off here. Should be raising a little bit bigger. It's not too terrible, but don't like my sizing here, considering the number of players and considering that I'm out of position. And we are quite deep here, somewhere around 1,500 effective, maybe slightly less. Anyway, action folds back to the under the gun +1, +2 position. He makes the call, as does the player on his left, which now I realize that he's in the hand because I see that he calls $130. So 3 ways to a flop of king 6-5, 2 spades, 1 diamond. Seems like an above average flop, no ace. Always like to see a non-ace high board with pocket kings. So I decided to put out a C bet, and I bet $215. Both players make the call, so a already pretty sizable pot brewing here for a 2-5 game. The turn is the 8 of diamonds, which brings a second flush draw on board. Now the board is quite wet. 2 flush draws, multiple straight draws available, pair plus straight draws, paired plus flush draws, all sorts of things happening on this board. And to go along with that, I only have about a pot size bet left. I have somewhere around $950 left at this point. So I think as played, it doesn't really leave too much room for too much else other than just going with it. $950 in my stack. Need to charge all draws the maximum. Maybe still get good value from an ace-queen hand. If I bet anything less, I think I run the risk of offering too good of a price to any sort of drawing type hand. So I go ahead and jam. I stick the $950 all in there. The first player goes well into the tank, thinks for somewhere around a minute before making the fold. The second player doesn't need much time at all. He snap calls. So it's not looking too good now. The river comes, I believe, a 9. It doesn't really matter because I show my hand and he shows us pocket 6s. So he played it pretty well. He played it in a manner that was going to allow him to get the maximum. When he flats the flop on a flush draw and connected potential straight draw, flush draw on board, he played it well. Massively under-reps his hand and gets me to commit the full stack. Not sure whether I would be getting away from it if he does put in a raise on the flop, but lose the maximum here with an overpair versus the flop set. The real question, I guess, is whether or not I should be betting the flop. And I put the question to the old text group, poker texting group, and I got some pretty good feedback. It seems as though I don't need to be putting in a bet on the flop. Can try and do some pot control, try and keep my range a little bit wide because my value betting range on this flop is very small. So I think I can go into check call mode, and I think that would have saved me a bunch of money. And looking back, I certainly wish I had gone into check call mode on the flop. I was for sure going to lose something. I was for sure going to lose a decent sized pot here no matter what. If I had seen the caller in there pre-flop and sized more appropriately pre-flop, I think odds were that I was still going to get called pre-flop, considering how deep we are and just considering the player. Don't think it's a professional player. Not positive though, so can't really be sure about that. Can't really be sure whether he would have peeled pre-flop if I had sized better in my 4-bet sizing. So kind of a bummer to say the least. Stuck a bunch off the bat there. Pocket kings no good. Torched by pocket 6s. All right, so next interesting hand, it comes up when there are 2 limpers, and once again I look down at pocket kings. Make it $30 to go. Both limpers make the call. So we are in position here in a 3-way flop, which comes 10-7-6 rainbow. Again, seems like a mostly good flop. Could be some straight draws available, some pairs plus straight draws, things of that nature. Can get some value from a 10, from a top pair. So after it checks to me, I'm gonna go ahead and bet. So I bet $60. The first limper decides 60 is not enough. He wants to play for 160. The old $100 raise. The player in the middle folds, and it's back to me. I'm already not loving the situation based on who this player is. He's a little bit of an older gentleman and seems to be playing mostly conservative. I don't want to just fold just yet, even though I'm not happy about it at all. The board is fairly connected, and he could have very well connected in various ways on this flop. 2 pairs, sets, or even a flop straight. But it's not very much more, so I go ahead and make the call just to see a turn card and see what happens. Turn is a 4 of diamonds, which brings a backdoor flush draw. This time he bets the mere sum of $400 US. At this point I'm done with it for sure. Pretty much snap fold here. Pocket kings not really working out for me that well. It's the second best hand ever created, but it doesn't feel like anything of the sort at the moment. So stuck quite a bunch. Stuck a bunch of money here. But the night is young. It's not too late. It's never fun getting that stuck right off the bat, because then usually what happens is it's just a night of trying to win your money back. But trying to keep that view of the long term in mind. Table seems pretty good, pretty active, and now some big stacks on the table, partially thanks to me pumping up their stacks. Here for the grind. Here to grind it out. Here to play some more cards, play some more hands. On to those next 2 cards.
You guys don't even want to know what time it is right now. All right, I'll tell you. Hopefully you can read that. 8:32 in the morning. I think it's gonna have to be rapid fire hand history style. Because I'm a little sleepy, not gonna lie. A little bit tired at the moment. I mean, who are we kidding, really? When you guys saw that I was stuck hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars right off the bat, we knew it was gonna be one of those sessions. An 8:30 in the morning session. All right, so I guess it's been a little while since we've had some proper hands from the front seat. Might as well just get right into these. Like I said, this might be a little bit rapid fire style, but we gotta get moving. We gotta get moving here. You know I struggle through this part, the wrapping up the hands after marathon sessions. I don't know if you guys can even see my face. Some weird shadow action happening, but let's move on. All right, so in this hand, under the gun, opens for 20. There's 2 calls. I look down at ace king in the small blind. 3-bet time. So I make it 120 to go. Only the first caller, the first field caller, makes the call. Heads up to a flop of king 10-9 with 2 clubs. I decided to check it this time. No c-bet for me this time. I decided to check it. Somewhat similar of a situation, I think. Maybe not exactly the same, but one of those spots where my value range isn't that wide, so I decided to check it. My opponent does not decide to check it. My opponent decides to bet it. And it's no small bet. He bets $215. Not too much choice here. I make the call. We're off to a turn card, which is another king. I check it over to him again. He's not done betting. Still betting, still firing away. And he's only got about $550 or $600 at this point. Jams it all in there. Once again, no decision here, no real decision to be made, I don't think. I've under-repped my hand. We're beating all kings. We lose 2 straights. We lose 2 full houses, pocket 10s, pocket 9s. We lose to queen jack, but I guess we have equity against all those hands. And we beat all kings. So never folding here. I make the call. River is a pretty good river. River is an offsuit ace. He shows his hand, which turns out to be ace queen of clubs. So flopped, nut flush draw plus gutter ball. We're able to hold on. We win a hand. We win a hand in this session, and it turns out to be a pretty good one. So that is some much needed relief. Happy to win that one. Good size pot. I'm trying to set this up to where you guys can see me and I can see you, sort of. Sorry about the sunglasses. I know it's not quite as intimate. Weird lighting, and it's bright, and I haven't seen sunlight in I don't know how many hours. Moving on. Next interesting hand. I open up queen 10 offsuit, $20 to go from the cutoff. Only the big blind calls. Heads up to a flop of 9-8-5 with 2 clubs. He checks it over to me, and I'm gonna put in a c-bet because queen high, can't really show that down, and I have some equity with a gut shot and 2 overcards. So it seems reasonable. I bet $25 and he makes the call. Turn is an offsuit 5 and he checks it over to me again. In this instance, versus this player, I decided I was not going to just shut down here. I bet $55 on the turn, and again he makes the call. The river is not a good one for us. It's an offsuit 4. So he checks it over to us, and we are unimproved. We have queen high still, and there's a bunch of money in the pot that I don't really want to give up. I'm gonna try and crowbar it away, so I start loading up a bet. I start assembling about $130, and it's one of those situations where before he can even wait for the bet, he just decides to muck. So that's always a relief when you're loading up a 3-barrel and they just go ahead and muck it before you're even done assembling your bet. All that being said, I don't think it's actually that good of a play, considering my actual holdings, considering my actual cards in this spot. Having the queen of clubs and having a 10
means I block some flush draws and I block some straight draws with both Jack 10, 10-7. Those are all cards that I would prefer my opponent to have if I'm going to be barreling and to get him to fold on the river when none of those draws come in. So with my exact holding, it doesn't seem like a very good 3-barrel candidate. But it worked out okay in this situation. I got it through, managed to get a 3-barrel through. I think versus this player in particular, he was fairly conservative and not really looking to put too much money into the pot without pretty strong holding. And considering that he didn't raise on the flop, it felt like he didn't have too strong of a holding. So it's not terrible versus this player in particular, I don't think, but on paper, with these 2 cards on this run out, don't really like a 3-barrel there. But it worked out. So it appears that the tide is turning. Things are going our way, thankfully. Managed to drag a couple of pots here and there. Some relief. And then this hand happens. Look down at pocket 8s, playing 6-handed now. Raise it up to $20 from under the gun. The button and the small blind make the call. So 3 ways to a flop of 9-8-7. Rainbow. Flop middle set here. Small blind checks. I put in a bet of $40. Both players make the call. So 3 ways to a turn card, which is a king of hearts, and it's the 2nd heart. Small blind checks. Certainly don't want to give any free cards here, so I bet $95. The button folds, and the small blind puts in a raise. $275. The reason I sized down on the turn a little bit when I have a really strong holding and there's some draws available is because I picked up a little bit of a tell from the small blind. He did the whole head shake thing where he was pretty blatantly acting as if he was disgusted with the flop or frustrated with missing the flop. And it would have been really heroic of me if I could have just checked back on the turn and action checks through on the turn, but no such luck. Couldn't help myself, just had to put in a bet even though it was a very obvious tell. But now we're facing a $275 bet, and considering that there's a decent amount of money left to play for, I think beyond the $275 we'd probably have somewhere around $800 effective. So I think I'm getting a pretty decent price, and I expect to get very good implied odds on a paired board on the river. So not going anywhere, I make the call. We're off to a river card heads up. Unfortunately, the river does not improve me. The river is an offsuit 6. My opponent bets $300. I give it the sigh, which is an actual sigh, not a false tell. Sigh, and I let it go. Let go of my pocket 8s, my flop set, and sure enough, he shows us Jack 10 offsuit. Flop the nuts. Frustrating. Can't turn the corner, cannot turn the corner. 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. So from there, progress. A little bit of progress was made. I started picking up some small to medium sized pots here. I put the button straddle on in one hand. Long story short, ended up making a full house with 7 deuce suited. There was a small raise to 25 pre-flop. Can't fold suited cards for a $25 raise when I've already got $10 in there. So sorry about that, but sorry not sorry. Full house with 7 deuce comes through. Ended up making the nut straight with queen jack off suit, 4 Broadway board, and my opponent puts in a decent sized bluff on the river. Take that one down as well. Then we make top 2 pair with Jack 10 on Jack 8-6, 10-4. We got a $55 bet in on the turn and a $165 bet on the river. That was a 3-way pot. Some momentum. We've picked up some momentum in the wee hours of the night / morning, early hours of the morning here. One more interesting hand to report. Once again, I put the button straddle on. There's an early position raise to 25. The cutoff calls, I call with queen 9 of diamonds. So we're going 3 ways to a flop here. 10-8-6, 1 diamond, double gutter. The initial raiser bet's $50 and we both make the call. Turn is an offsuit ace. This time the initial raiser bet's $80, which is very small. The player in the middle folds, and standard situation, once again, not going anywhere, not folding for this price, double gutter, cannot fold. It's just way too cheap.
I suppose we could possibly also bluff maybe a 9, turn our hand into a bluff on one of those rivers potentially. Seems like it would be pretty connected to a lot of hands that we would continue on the flop with. So a couple different plans here. I make the call, and the good news is plan A comes in nicely. Offsuit jack on the river, and he doesn't stop betting. He bets $120, and even though we don't have the nuts here, it seems pretty unlikely that he should wind up having a king-queen hand in this spot. So happy to put in a raise. I raised up to $375. He doesn't think for too long, and he tosses in the call. So with him flat calling there, that means we scoop. And towards the end of the session, we somehow get all the way unstuck into the game for $3,000, out of the game for $3,504. Profit of 504 according to my math. Yeah, not the easiest $504 that you can make at the poker table, but no complaints after being stuck $1,500. I guess I'm happy about it. Definitely feel happy about staying disciplined. I feel like we learned a thing or two about flop bets and flop bets that shouldn't have happened, particularly one. So it's always a learning experience. This is where I'm supposed to say something very insightful and thoughtful, but it's 9 in the morning now, and I just really want to go to sleep. So I think I will let those clouds next to the Wynn do the talking, and then I'm out of here. Thanks for watching, as always.